And the third point, that evolutionists disagree with each other and have changed their minds quite a few times, is not really a criticism. I mean, that's how science works, how knowledge is built up. I mean, a hypothesis is put forward, checked, and if found inadequate, it's abandoned. It's true that a number of earlier theories about evolution were later found to be inadequate. I mean, Lamarck's theory of the inheritance of acquired characteristics and Ernst Haeckel's view that development of the human embryo recapitulated the evolution of animals, you know, versus the fish, a reptile, and a mammal, and apes. And then there are frauds like the Piltdown man, which did take in evolutionists for 50 years or so. And having said this, the basic facts of evolution are well established. That is, that existing species evolved from earlier species, and that this took place through natural selection. Just give one more example of the Jehovah's Witnesses entering the world of facts and getting their fingers wet. This is a pamphlet they produced about evolution against the modern world, against the New World, published in the 1950s. And this is what they say. The discoveries of real science prove the truth of the Bible account, which I read at the beginning. Science confirms the order of the appearance of the different big living groups, as is indicated in the first chapter of Genesis. That the person who wrote this, I'm trying to think of the French over there, the person who wrote this book had guessed this order is an infinitesimal probability. The first book what they're saying in the end is that the person who wrote Genesis could only have known this if they got the information from God, if they were divinely inspired. But the point is that the Bible gets it wrong. Life certainly did it, certainly I would say, originated in the seas, but birds came much later and weren't created at the same, didn't come into being at the same time as fishes, and in fact they descended from land animals. And some of the sea creatures, like the whales, which is specifically mentioned in that quote from the Bible, are descended from land animals. So I say, it's just wrong. The Genesis story hasn't been confirmed by the findings of modern science. So to come to a conclusion, I think, say that life forms were not created, not even at different times. Natural selection has led not just to the appearance of subspecies, which is the microevolution that Jehovah's Witnesses talk about, but also, as Darwin said, to completely new species, to all the different species which exist and have existed. Incidentally, about 99% of species have existed have gone extinct. Now, the origin, which makes, if God made them, it's a waste of time. The origin of life forms and features can be explained without divine intervention, without an intelligent designer, creator, or maker. In short, the creationists haven't got a leg to stand on. Okay, thanks.
Right, thanks very much. I'm sure we all found that very interesting and informative. Right, so 20 to 11 now, so now there's plenty of time for questions and discussion. And then when that draws to an end, if we maybe take a break for 15-20 minutes for tea and coffee, and then we'll come back in for our extra mini session afterwards. Lunch is at 12:30, so yeah, we'll make sure that everything's wrapped up for then. Does anyone want to volunteer to be the chair for the discussion? I've probably done a bit too much of that this weekend. If no one volunteers, I don't mind. Yeah, Andy, yeah? All right, yeah, you actually practiced being the chair last night, didn't you? Yeah. To speak first. Sten.
Yeah, you said that scientists are yet to create organic life from inorganic life. Isn't it true that they have? Because I remember watching a program in the 70s, Carl Sagan's Cosmos, and he was creating life in a test tube and demonstrating that, from, inorganic life. i.e. molecules of oxygen and hydrogen, elements that they thought would exist
Yeah.
at the start of the universe.
Yeah, perhaps, but depends, of course, what you mean by, by life. I mean, life is generally defined as something that's self-replicating. I don't know whether they've got that far yet. They might have, as you say, created an organic matter from inorganic matter, but whether that, so you can argue about whether that's life or not, in the sense that life has to be something that can keep reproducing itself. But I think, at some stage, they will be able to do that. I mean, or we will be able to do that. Humans will be able to do that, and then, as I say, that will finally put a nail in the coffin that those that argue that life itself could only have been created, by a creator. As I said at the beginning, this theory of the origin of life and the theory of evolution are not necessarily the same. I mean, Darwin didn't say anything about the origin of life. He was talking about the evolution from an original life form. However that might have come into being. I don't suppose he thought it came into being by God, but he didn't pronounce on that at all.
Yeah, can I say something about that? I think basically what they were doing, they were making amino acids, which were sort of the starting building blocks of life. And they demonstrated this by putting various chemicals that they thought represented the primordial soup and whatever, passing electricity through it, that they would form into amino acids. It seemed to be sort of good evidence that there was a process that would obviously take millions of years from that point onwards for life to arise from that. And I think there's also, I think Sagan was pointing out that in the gaseous nebulae, way out in space, there are also organic molecules, amino acids and so on. There's a possibility that the life could be all over the place out there. Also reading something this week or last week about Lamarck. Apparently that's coming back into fashion. Not to depose evolution in any way, but to suggest subtle changes from, say, grandparents to grandchildren. Like the diet of your grandparents may actually influence some of the genetic expressions in your grandchildren. Switching on and off genes,
I mean, Lamarck was on the right track. That things do happen gradually. It didn't happen in the way that he supposed. That a giraffe stretched its neck, and then that was inherited by its descendants. But so it is a gradual thing, and but I don't think. Well, I mean, it isn't the case that acquired characteristics are inherited.
Well, what I've been reading about new scientists, things like they're looking for explanations for things like diabetes and obesity and all kinds of other sort of health issues that we seem to be suddenly occurring now. And there's evidence, for example, that say if your grandparents went through a period of extreme privation, starvation, and what have you, that it would, or even that your mother, while she was carrying you in the womb, was going through some sort of serious privation, that would actually affect the genetic expression. So some genes would be switched on or off, so that when you were born, you'd be more efficient at using food and energy and stuff like that. Yeah.
Okay, but that doesn't refute it.
Oh no!
I'm not saying you should do.
No, I'm not saying that.
Can we all hear this, please?
I think if people stood up, when I was sitting in the back,
Okay,
you can't hear them at the front.
Okay, Jacqueline. Would you like to say something?
No, I want to hear what's being
Sorry,
said.
but
It's like
the
private
right at the front is saying.
conversation.
Sorry, it puts me in an awkward
Right.
position, but
Yeah.
no, I think George has got.
No, I was just saying that recently in New Scientist, there was a sort of a revisiting of Lamarck, and the idea that that there is some evidence that from your grandparents and parents there is a slight, for example, if say if your mother went through starvation or something like that, that it would actually trigger switch